Have you ever had any situations where people would test you outside of the ring because of who you are? Welcome to this episode of Chattin with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Randy Couture. So now, when you win a title, what's that feeling like when you're raising your hands up and you got the belt on? What's going through your head?
Well, it's obviously a sense of accomplishment. You set a goal, you set out to solve some problems in both the physical and tactical nature. And when it goes well, it's a great night. You feel elated. That elation can last for a couple of weeks and doesn't just go away overnight. And the accomplishment of those goals, that gives you confidence that you have a model and a way to replicate that, to go do that again.
Yeah. So now, what's it like when you lose? How is it like stepping away from the ring once you lose?
That's actually, it gets dark. You hate to have setbacks, but you have to embrace that. You have to recognize that is your opportunity to really dig in, to change course, to figure out what you did wrong, analyze it with your team, with the guys that helped you get there, be honest about it, and then set about fixing those things you made mistakes in. Mistakes happen, even the times you won. I never watched the fights I won. Why? I got the outcome I wanted. But you can bet your butt I watched the ones I lost, because that's where I was going to get better. That's where I was going to be a better athlete. And like I said before, a better human at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, their skill set is pretty, it's at a high level, you know?
Oh, no doubt about it.
Yeah, these are modern day gladiators. I look at them like they're modern day gladiators, basically.
A lot of great fighters out there. The science of athletics has gone a long way. I fought till I was 47. I think you're seeing that trend across the board in athletics, in a lot of sports. Guys fighting well into their 40s now, where that cutoff used to be around 30. Most people thought you were over the hill at 30 if you were especially getting into a combative sport like boxing or wrestling or fighting. I started at 33, almost 34, and they already thought I was an old man and over the hill. That in some ways gave me an advantage. I feel like I was underestimated a lot, overlooked by many, and being the underdog seemed to suit me very, very well. It takes the pressure off. You can just go out and do exactly what you trained to do and not worry about it, any of the rest of that stuff.
Have you ever had any situations where people would test you outside of the ring because of who you are?
No. You get the offhanded comment here or there. Oh, I thought you'd be bigger, or things like that. Most of the time there's alcohol involved. I'm smiling. I got nothing to prove to anybody. I'm a generally gregarious and outgoing person. So you're going to have to really push me to challenge me like that. And that's never happened. Nobody, they see the cauliflower ears, and
usually that's a sign, right? Stay the fuck away from me, man. Since you retired, what was it like retiring?
And well, I think it's always a challenge. I've been in that transition a couple of times. I walked away from the military, after 6 years. Thankfully, I had a built-in new purpose. I was left the Army to start my college career and wrestle in college and get my degree. So there was no downtime. I didn't have to flounder or wonder what I was going to do next or who I was when I walked away from that uniform. And that's a struggle for a lot of guys. And the same thing when you walk away from athletics after 14 years of being a professional athlete, it becomes a big part of who you are, of your identity. So, making that rational choice, making this, the decision to walk away when I did on my own terms. I had acting and the business stuff, the clothing company, the gym, and all that other stuff was up and functioning. So my purpose and goal was already built in. I knew where I was headed. I didn't struggle. I was very fortunate in that regard. That transition for a lot of athletes is a real struggle. They lose that piece of who they are, and what their purpose is now. And so finding a way to get back, finding a way to get involved in something new that's positive, that isn't self-medicating, isn't adrenaline seeking, can be a huge thing for a lot of these guys. And that our veterans go through the same issue. That transition, walking away from that uniform, can be a real challenge. As many of them are so excited to get out of that uniform and get out of the service, and they don't forward think about, okay, well, what are you going to do now? Where are you headed? Who are you now? However long you served, that became your identity and your purpose. So that is a real struggle for a lot of our guys.
Yeah, I think getting a plan in place and getting the right steps for what you're going to do moving forward is a big thing to help people, you know?
Yeah, the military does very little. They give you a week, I think, a week of training when you process out. And then obviously we have all heard the horror stories with the VA and getting any kind of services through the VA and the waiting lists and all that stuff is just a nightmare. So we got a lot of work to do there. We've got a lot of things to clean up. I don't want to open a political can of worms, but
Yeah.
we have a lot of issues for sure.
So I want to ask you about the referees and the judges.
Yep.
What do you think that their skill set should be? Because I've heard some people tell me they don't even know some of the moves that they're doing on the other opponents. They don't even know what's going on. He's like, I don't even know. Some of the judges have no clue of what they're watching. So
Yeah,
are
well,
they?
there's been a learning curve for sure with the judging, the referees. John McCarthy's been great. There's a lot of places out there, and John runs a school to try and educate a lot of guys about what they're looking at and how to deal with the pressure of making those decisions in the heat of the moment. And I think he's produced and been involved with raising the level of referee that we've had in our sport, and that learning curve has gone way up because of his school and a lot of the things that he does. And I see a lot of those referees come into the gym because they want to observe training, they want to see the situations, the mindset, and all the things that we're doing in the training environment. That only helps them when they walk out in that cage on fight night to be a better referee. We're seeing more fighters getting, Frank Trigg is judging and refereeing now. Chris Lieben is judging now. And I think that's great. We need more fighters to step up and be willing to assume those roles because they do know what they're looking at. And there has been a huge learning curve with the judges. And I think the judges are the area right now where we need a lot of work. And there needs to be some accountability. Why are people so disenchanted with boxing? Because we get so many of these disparaging decisions. I watched one fight and the judges score that fight a completely different way than how I saw it go down. And we're seeing some of that in MMA now too. And there's no accountability. There's always going to be the human factor. Humans are making those decisions, but there still has to be some transparency and accountability for those judges that are making those calls and putting those scores down on those scorecards. Why don't they show those scores each round so the fighters know exactly where they stand? The crowd knows exactly what's going on and how the judges at least are seeing those. And then that judge has to be accountable for that score he put on that card. At the end of the night, I don't see any accountability or transparency there. They don't have to stand up and account for themselves. Well, where did you come up with this 96 in this fight? Everybody else saw it this way, or the other two judges saw it a different way. Please account for yourself. And I think those, especially when there's world championship fights on the line, those need to be the exceptional judges and the exceptional referees that are controlling a person's career in their hands and those decisions they make in the heat of that moment. And I think when you get it wrong, there has to be some accountability. They have to be demoted. They shouldn't be able to go right back into the next card and judge somebody else's championship fight when they've just messed up a call on this card. And I think that's there has to be. I know we have that in wrestling. There's a ranking system for referees and judges in wrestling and international competition, and only the top ranked guys get to do the Olympics or the World Championship finals because there's so much at stake. And I think a very similar system would be easy to implement in fighting in both boxing and MMA because we have some work that needs to be done there.
Yeah, because sometimes I was talking to Stitch, Jacob Stitch Duran, and he was saying, they see a guy on top, they don't care. They're going to score it like he's winning. The guy on the bottom could be beating the shit out of the dude, and the guy on top's going to win.
Recognizing what you're looking at, who's dictating the fight, the pace of the fight, the technique and the tactics of the fight, who's responding or forcing the other athlete to respond is a huge thing, and who's winning a fight. And that can be disguised when somebody gets taken down. You can be in a bottom position and still be dictating the pace, tactics, and technique that are occurring in that fight. Defense is its own reward. It doesn't account on the scorecards because you have to defend tactics and technique or the fight's over, right? So
Yeah.
I think a lot of judges and some of the referees don't understand some of those situations. In my opinion, the refereeing pool has gotten way, way better over the course of the last 10 years, the last decade. The judges, I think, there's still some work and some transparency and accountability that needs to be built into that part of the sport in both boxing and MMA.
Yeah. So they don't have to show the card on how they judge?
They don't know.
It's wild. I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of times it's not made public, especially if it's controversial at all. Sometimes they will show it after the fact, but I think that score should be put up there each round so a fighter knows where he's at, through the
And
course
then
of a fight.
he'll know what he
He
can
can turn
work
it up
on.
or, do
Yeah.
whatever he needs to do to get himself back in a fight or whatever the case may be. So
Now, what about the pay for the fighters? How has the pay since you started versus now, what you know, how has the pay for the fighters changed?
well, certainly the fighter pay has incrementally increased over the years, in the years, the 20 plus years that I've been doing it. But that's another area where I think we have a lot to do, a lot to get done. Again, there's lack of transparency. Promoters in the sport of mixed martial arts don't have to disclose how much money they're making off any one of these events. So how is the fighter supposed to go out and negotiate his fair value in the marketplace if nobody knows how much money was just made on the fight and the card that he was just on? They don't disclose that information. There's no transparency there. These contracts are very restrictive. What's the UFC have? 650 fighters signed to their roster to a very exclusive contract. They're not allowed to go fight anywhere else. They've signed away all their ancillary rights. That's their ability to write a book, be in a video game, do a movie, any of those things that are outside with that image that they supposedly created in that cage. They now have to get Dana White's permission or the company's permission to be able to do any of those things that are ancillary to walking up in that cage and fighting. I think that's wrong. I think that's a mistake. And that's one of the reasons why I'm persona non grata with the UFC to this day, because I fought for those ancillary rights. I shined a light on those nasty contracts. And they don't like me to this day because of it. But I was doing what was best for me in my career. I wanted to hold my career in my hands and make the decisions that I thought were best for me. I didn't want to leave that up to somebody else.
So you had to fight to get out of the contract to go and be in movies and things like that?
The UFC signed, Zuffa bought the company in 2001. They were already taking people's ancillary rights, but not many fighters knew what an ancillary right was or what that was worth. I had good management at that time. And that's a whole nother topic that we could get into, but I had a very good management team at that time, battle management with Jeremy Lapp and Peter Levin. And they educated me on what an ancillary right was and why I should not sign the 17-page contract that Zuffa just put in my face to re-up and continue to be their heavyweight champion, and what those ancillary rights meant. So I held their feet to the fire. They just bought the company. I'm the heavyweight champ. They're kind of stuck with me. I don't think they thought I was very marketable because I was in my 40s in 2001, and they would have loved to have gotten rid of me. Hence, they want me to fight Pedro Rizzo in my very first fight with them at the helm. They just signed him to a 9-fight deal. Here's this nice, big, strong, young Brazilian cat that they thought was going to bring the Latin American crowd in to the pay-per-views and to their brand. And they were sure he was going to beat me. And then they'd be done with me. They didn't have to worry about my 42-year-old butt anymore being their heavyweight champion. It didn't go that way. And my entire career was kind of under that same guise, that same situation almost from the start because of my age. But at the end of the day, I did what I had to do, and I beat Pedro. They forced me into an automatic rematch with Pedro in that next fight, and I beat him again. So that was kind of the end of that story. But I found myself in that situation a lot. Fighting Chuck the first time for the interim championship, fighting Tito. Just time and time again, I think they were pretty sure I was going to get my butt whooped and get beat, and I managed to come through.
Shout out to Chuck Liddell, great guy.
Yeah, Chuck's a great guy.
How was it to transition into acting? What was it like to be in front of the cameras after being in the ring?
Well, I think being involved in the three of the first four seasons of The Ultimate Fighter actually was a big leg up for me. You're wearing a microphone, you forget you're wearing it. You're standing in front of a camera, teaching, doing the things you're already good at, and why you're in that coaching position in the first place. So you know the content, you know the sport inside and out. So that's an easy thing to do, and you get used to being in front of a camera and being filmed like that. So I think that actually helped me. You forget the camera's there, sometimes to your own detriment.